Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra. We do it each and every Wednesday at 10:30 with the Forum's Mike McFeely. Good enough to join us this week. I'm Dom Izzo as North Dakota State football wraps up the 2024 regular season at the Dakota Dome in Vermillion with fourth-ranked South Dakota. Michael, we've been looking at this game for a while, and now it's actually come to fruition. USD won its games. The Bison took care of business, and we got an awful lot at stake coming up on Saturday.
It's come down to the last weekend of the season to kind of sort everything out. And as I've said before, and I've been upfront about this, I wasn't sure about South Dakota to start the year. I wanted to see what they had before I said, wow, they're really good. They're really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not the team we saw last year in Vermillion at the end of the season when NDSU beat them 45-17 in the quarterfinals. USD's a legit team, and it's everything's on the line for NDSU and USD.
Yeah, Coyotes have never won the Valley Championship. They can do that with a win. They'll share it with the Bison, and the Jackrabbits would share it as well if they end up winning against Missouri State. And the Bison players, and you asked Cam Miller about this right after the game, after they beat the Bears on Saturday, he said, yeah, this is, what else would you want? You're playing for everything at stake. And I think they like the element, Mike, of being on the road to go and do this.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
You're right.
I mean, you'd always rather have them at home, right?
Clearly.
I mean, you'd always rather have 18,000 fans on your side than 5 or 6 or 7,000 fans against you. But as Tim Paulsek said, and it might be coach speak, it might not be, maybe you need to go on the road to galvanize
get in the bunker
and to get focused and to get away from distractions and to not sit on your laurels. And to head down and get down to Vermillion and take care of business.
I thought he brought up a great point before we get into the nitty-gritty on South Dakota about not letting the players think about last year. And you and I talked about this on my show yesterday, that it's a different team. Because it's easy, I think, for fans, Bison fans especially, to look back and say, well, the last time they played, NDSU just rolled them down there, that it might be that easy again on Saturday.
I was just listening to a podcast of our friends John Gaskins and Matt Zimmer down in Sioux Falls, and between when they were taking shots at you and I for talking so much about the Mountain West stuff, Matt Zimmer did make a good point and said, last year you almost kind of knew that NDSU was going to go down there in the playoffs and beat USD. It's the Bison against the Yotes, and the Yotes are just kind of, hey, we're happy to be here. And it showed. I mean, it just showed.
Definitely.
This year, I've watched the Yotes, I think, 3 times now, and especially that South Dakota State game, they look like they belong. Like, we're not just along for the ride. We're not happy to be winning games. There's other bigger things to accomplish. And so I think if you're a Bison fan looking at this going, wow, look what we did last year, I don't think that matters. I think USD is going to be very focused and ready to go.
South Dakota, of course, led by Aiden Bauman at quarterback. They got 2 tremendous running backs. Travis Tice, frankly, hasn't had a breakout game against the Bison in 3 years. That might come on Saturday. Charles Pierre Jr. as well. They know Carter Bell, to Bison fans now, USD's all-time leading receiver. They have 2 dynamite defensive ends. Mike East Grace, who had the fumble recovery against the Jacks. Nick Gaze is out there. They've got guys, as Tim Paulsek says, at all 3 levels on defense that's going to present a challenge.
Yeah, I still think that if you're looking at it, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, and South Dakota are all really close. And they look like each other. Tim Paulsek mentioned this yesterday when I asked him about, how is USD so much better than they were for all those years? And one of the things that Tim said was, they changed offenses, and we saw that last year. They got away from the spread stuff, and they got away from the tempo stuff. And we look back on some of those games when NDSU beat USD 59-10 and all those scores. A lot of it was because USD would go on the field, go 3 and out in like 30 seconds, and then their defense would be back on the field.
Correct.
And then they go back out, go 3 and out in 30 seconds, then the defense is back on the field. And so they're trying to do they're mirroring what NDSU did, South Dakota State did, and now USD is doing the same thing.
I remember the game in Fargo last year. USD had the ball for 9 minutes in the first quarter, and they scored a touchdown, and the Bison had, that game, the Bison only had like 6 possessions, and USD won the football game because they hung on to the ball as long as they did.
I know last year, talking to some of the players and some of the coaches after last year's South Dakota loss, there was maybe a little bit of, we just didn't show up, and it just kind of a bad week, and just, we'd like another shot at them, because we think we're better than what we showed up in the Fargo Dome, and that proved to be the case. but I don't think either team on Saturday is going to like stumble out there and fall behind 21-0 because they weren't ready to go.
The element of the home crowd, we always know the Bison travel well over 1 million. I expect that'll be the case again on Saturday. How big a deal can that be on the flip side as South Dakota's fans make an impact in this game?
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, you're going to have it's still going to be much louder for USD than it is for NDSU. And what happened last year, and we've talked about this, is that NDSU got out of the gate so quickly that the crowd was just dead and gone after halftime.
They really were.
Like the students were gone at halftime. There was nobody left in the stadium wearing red by the time the game was over. If NDSU can do that again, if they can get out and score early on their, will they take the ball?
Yeah.
If NDSU wins the toss, will they take the ball?
I think so.
I bet they would.
I think so.
I bet they would. And so that's going to be part of it too is, we saw in the Alara Center last year in another smaller type stadium, NDSU let UND get out front and the crowd never stopped. And nobody left.
And
until after they stormed the field afterward.
That's right.
Which I would expect is going to happen on Saturday if USD wins the game.
It happens anytime the Bison lose. That
as they should.
Yeah.
I mean, that's college football, man. It's fun.
It's
they should storm the field. Good for them.
The fact of the matter is, we'll get to the bracketology part of this in a minute on what's at stake in this game. NDSU knows if they are able to do this, Mike, they don't leave Fargo. They win this game. They know they've got I believe, the number 1 seed and a pathway to Frisco, Texas.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, that's
right there. It's laying right there in front of them, right?
You don't need to say anything else. It's possible to win road games in the playoffs.
Yeah. Bison did it last year.
NDSU showed that last year, and some would argue, that they easily could have won the game in Montana, and I thought they would have given the Jacks a better game in Frisco. I don't know if they would have won. The Jacks were just that good. But I think with the offense NDSU had, they would have given the Jacks a better game. But you don't want to leave home. And every time they've had home field advantage, except for that one time against James Madison, they went to Frisco.
It's worked out pretty good.
Who wants to come into Fargo in December and try to unseat the number 1 team in the country? Which, by the way, the last couple of years it kind of felt like NDSU was sort of limping into the playoffs. If the Bison can win this game, they've been going like this the last several weeks.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly there.
The Bison are a better team today than they were 6 weeks ago.
And they're better defensively. That's the thing where I look at it, where we were lamenting after Colorado and after Johnson City, like where is the second half of Towson? What's going to happen here?
Well, I mean,
they got better.
There's been a sense a little bit around here, and I know that there's a sense in South Dakota that the Bison really took a step back the last several years. And I think there was a small step back. I don't know if that step exists anymore. I think that's an old narrative that you can't really play on anymore. That I think NDSU, SDSU, and we'll see on Saturday, but I think USD are all right there in the mix.
And they might be getting healthy, the Bison. Raja Nelson is going to play, and this has been really interesting to see how Tim Polasek and Nelson have navigated this after he got hurt against Colorado. He came back and played against UND. He came back and was a pretty big factor against South Dakota State. Can he have that kind of impact again on Saturday?
Well, and we talked about this, but he did okay against the Jackrabbits.
He was all right against the Jacks.
With the 2 touchdowns against the Jackrabbits, he did okay. But I think Tim Polasek has said, he said early on this season that we're going to have to manage this, and there's a chance that he only plays 4 games. And he said publicly, you can look at the schedule and maybe figure out which 4 games they might be.
Yep.
And so we've got 3 of them right so far. And this would be the 4th.
Yep.
But he brings a different element to the Bison offense than anybody else. And I think that's why it's so important that he plays in these big games is, he just brings something else that they don't have without him on the field.
And his availability going forward, because for folks that don't know, the playoff games don't count against your eligibility. So he will have a chance. He'll be back on this roster. As of now, the portal season opens here in about 3 weeks, so it's going to get nuts. Yeah. But he will be on this roster in 2025.
That's what we think.
As of now.
And that's what Tim said yesterday. I'm not going to say anything about anything because who knows in this day and age.
Right.
But, again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here. But so if Raja Nelson plays Saturday, which we expect, it's been a 3-week break between his games so far. And so the Bison would get a bye week, win or lose.
Yep.
Then you'd have a home second-round game. And if it's somebody that you maybe
presumably, it's the 16 seed, presumably you play.
If you're the number 1 seed, it would be the 16 seed. Do you need to play that game? I don't think so. They held out Christian Watson a couple of years ago until the championship game. And then it would get to the quarterfinals. Then would that be the game, or would you wait then until the semis, and then a 3-week break,
Yep.
and then the championship game in Frisco.
I think that is probably
I think the last one
that
might
latter plan sounds like one that you may go by.
Yep.
As we head into the final week, and we were talking about this on Monday, now with the advent of the 16 seeds, I'm not sure as much, and I know you always say for teams 25, 26, and 27, win more. Don't
Yes.
lose.
Yep.
But I think really this year, Mike, when you look at the field, there's not going to be anything really to complain about, especially with teams playing 12 games. When you look at our bracketology heading into the final week of the season, the automatic bids, 5 of them are already claimed.
Yep.
The Bison will win the automatic bid if they end up winning the game Saturday against South Dakota. But for teams like a Montana or teams like Northern Arizona could get to 8 wins.
8-4.
Yeah.
I mean, yep.
That's – you threw this at me, and I thought about it again last night. If UND were to win Saturday at Illinois State and be 6-6, they'd have wins over Illinois State and Montana. That may still be warrant conversation. They might not be in.
I think my bigger point was UND has had a really tough stretch here.
Yes,
and
those 5 in a row.
They have not played well.
Yep.
Their defense is not good. But the same old story. And you're going to hear this in the college football playoffs at the big boy level too, is the 6th place SEC team, still better than a team that might be in the playoffs.
Right.
And I don't know that it is, but if UND plays Drake, UND's going to, but that's an auto bid situation.
Correct.
But that's the argument.
Yep.
Is the 5th place team in the Valley better than the 3rd place team in the SoCon?
Correct.
Or the UAC?
There's some interesting connections here. Tennessee State could win. They play SEMO on Saturday. That's a big challenge. But if right now Tennessee State has 8 wins. They're 8-3. One of the 3 losses, of course, was to North Dakota State. That should be enough to get them in. And certainly if they beat SEMO,
well, if they
they're
win,
in.
if they go 9-3, I think it would be a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
They should be in at that point. And wouldn't they win? Wouldn't they win the automatic?
They would have a share of the automatic.
Right.
Yeah, they have a share of the championship, and they would have the automatic bid.
So they'd be in.
East Tennessee State is out now, and they're 6-5. That was something I know that the Bison were hoping for, considering that, hey, if East Tennessee State makes it, that's another win over a playoff team that got us.
Well, and so when Montana State, going way back, when they beat New Mexico to start the season,
I know it.
We thought, boy, what a blah.
Yep.
Now,
nope.
New Mexico's really, they've turned it around.
And on the flip side of that, Colorado is sitting out there, and I know the college football playoff selections will happen after the FCS, but that loss is a pretty good loss for the Bison right now.
If you want to use that phrase. But to me, you can talk all of that stuff about North Dakota State. If they win,
it's right there for them.
They should be the number 1 seed because they were the number 1 seed last time. I think if they win in Vermillion, then they've showed that they're the best team in the country to this point.
Is there, give me a percentage chance of anybody outside of Montana State, SDSU, USD, or NDSU making Frisco?
Oh, the only other one, could Davis get in there?
Maybe.
I don't know. Is Idaho playing better now? They have their quarterback
they're all right.
back, but it would take an upset on the road.
They'd have to go beat somebody. They'd have to beat one of those 4 on the road.
The one, North Dakota State has been there a million times. Although these players are playoff tested, the Jacks are playoff tested.
Doubt.
Montana State is playoff tested, and they are not happy with the way things ended last year. Still,
no doubt,
and nor should they be.
Yep.
But USD they still don't have that playoff battle-tested experience. So, might that be a place to now? If they beat North Dakota State Saturday, this is a playoff game on Saturday.
No doubt
For both teams.
Yes, it is.
The playoffs have started early for both these teams. If the Yotes win on Saturday, they're playoff tested.
And I'm really interested if USD loses, where they get seated on Sunday morning.
Yeah, I think you're.
I'm probably harsher on this.
You're harsher on them than I am.
Yeah.
I still think you have to look at it and say, despite their record, who have they lost to, and how would they match up against the team that you'd put ahead of them? And so if you're going to put Mercer
ahead of them,
of South Dakota, really?
Yep.
Really? You're going to do that, committee? Come on. Come on.
Let's break. We come back. It's a dynamite Saturday games for the final week of the season. We'll preview that. Get ready for the Bison and the Yotes. We're back here on the Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra right after this. All right, wrapping up this Bison Media Zone Wednesday. I just realized on our games of the week, Michael, I neglected the game this weekend. Yale and Harvard are playing. That is the game. Yale is 6-3. Harvard's 8-1. Get them into the playoffs. Somebody open the door for the Ivy League.
I thought that was being talked
It
about.
is
Right?
being talked about.
Somebody at was it the Harvard?
The Harvard
student
Crimson
newspaper?
reported that.
Yes, they reported there's a chance that it might happen.
Get the crusty old presidents of the Ivy League to open the doors on their players playing. But that's one of the spotlight games. Obviously, Mike, we got the Brawl of the Wild game with Montana and Montana State. That
Blowout.
game in Bozeman.
Blowout.
The Jackrabbits of Missouri State.
Blowout.
That's Mo State's final game in FCS football. That game in the, I'll still call it the Colonial, William and Mary in Richmond. William and Mary, they win that. They get to 8 wins. And the CEA is going to get 5 teams in. Granted,
Sure.
that league has 16 teams in it. They're going to get 5
Yep.
in Richmond, by the way, at 9-2. They're playing for a top 8 seed. They win that, they'll have 10 wins. They've already won the automatic bid out of that
What
conference.
I have to say to the Missouri Valley Football Conference teams that don't get in is win more games.
Yes. Yep.
Right? Beat
All the time.
Indiana State and Youngstown State on the road. Then you'll get in the playoffs.
Correct.
You'll be in.
And, of course, the Bison game at South Dakota, 1 o'clock, that game on WDAY coming up on Saturday. You made a point of this, and I think the Bison have shown this in past years. The Jackrabbits certainly have, of playing your best ball now. I think the Bison are trending in that direction. Paul thinks they haven't played their best game yet. I'm curious.
They always say that.
I know.
I mean, I
they
remember,
were pretty darn good on
I remember
Saturday.
back in 2018 when Easton Stick was a senior, and I kept asking them. I mean, they just were pounding teams. And it's like they looked like the cleanest football games ever. And I'd ask Easton after every game, was this the perfect game? Nope, haven't played the perfect game yet. Nope, haven't played the perfect game yet. Jeff Choate might argue that.
Yeah, Montana State.
In the Montana State semifinal game. But even then, they just had never played the perfect game.
Is there, if you look at the other matchups there, they were talking about South Dakota State just is hanging out there, Mike. Like, talk about the Bison on Montana State. The Jacks are just sitting there like, all right, we're still pretty darn good, and we're going to be 10-2.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's overlooking them. I just think that it's, with a resurgence of North Dakota State, Montana State has certainly just been very impressive so far. And so you're always looking for the fresh storylines. And it is. Jacks are very good. I said after NDSU beat South Dakota State at the Dome, I said in our post-game video, Jacks can still win the national championship. It's a 4-point game in Fargo. The game could have gone either way. The Jacks could very much still be hoisting the trophy in Frisco on January 5th or whatever it is.
Montana State has not had a season ended by either North Dakota State or South Dakota State since 2017. Just think of that. Every year for Montana State since 2018, either the Bison or the Jacks have ended their season.
Yeah.
That's got to be sitting there in their craw here.
It is, and maybe this is Brent Vigen's best team. I mean, it could be, and
Malot's really good.
I mean, was it Sean Fredericks on the pregame show down in?
We're in Carbondale.
Where were we? Carbondale.
Yeah.
Freddie came out and said Montana State's going to win the whole thing. And whoa, okay. And he might be right. Maybe this is it for Montana State.
This is also the last game that'll count for the voters for the Peyton and the Rice Awards. I think Marty Brown's got a great chance to win the Jerry Rice Award as freshman of the year.
I've been on the Cam Miller. Call me a homer. I don't care. I mean, Cam Miller has been the best player in FCS, and he should be the offensive player of the year in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. He should win the Peyton. And frankly, I don't know what else is out there for Marty Brown to compete against, but to be a redshirt freshman, and he maybe could go over 1,000 yards in the regular season this weekend. South Dakota's a tough team to do that against, to get 80 yards or whatever it's going to be against, but he certainly has a shot at that.
Thanks as always for coming by. We can't wait. Mike will be part of our crew heading down to Vermilion on Saturday. Join us for Bison Game Day. We hit the air at 10 a.m. on WDAY, and then, of course, the game at 1 o'clock. We hit the air at 12:50. North Dakota State goes for the outright Valley Championship. South Dakota, with a win, can share the Valley title. Should be a dynamite day to wrap up the 2024 regular season. We can't wait for that. Our thanks to Mike for joining us. We're back next Wednesday on the Bison Media Zone. We'll see everybody then. Thanks for watching, everyone.